Talking Nets, episode 38. Keith McPherson and Hudson Flynn coming to you the day before June 26th, which is a historic day to honor the Stonewall Riots. I think it's been 51 years since the Stonewall Riots. If you don't know what that is, Google it, do some research. We're not going to talk too much about that on this pod, but we are going to open up recognizing Pride Month, recognizing pride in the LGBTQ community. And the tie-in here is with the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Liberty, the Barclays Center, the NBA, and Jason Collins. Now, I'll kick it off just talking about Jason Collins. Jason Collins was the first openly gay athlete, pro athlete, first player to publicly come out in the NBA. He came out after the NBA lockout. I watched a video where he said in 2011, 2012, he was still an active player, but the NBA locked out, and he was sitting at home with his dog, and he was thinking about, wow, like he was thinking about retirement. Like, wow, I'm sitting here on the couch with not much to do. This is where I'm headed for retirement. And he was thinking about, telling his truth, and just not having to wear a mask anymore and mask who he truly was and hiding. And he did end up coming out while he was active in 2013. Some other facts about the guy: he obviously played for the Nets, and you guys know that, but he wore number 98 to honor Matthew Shepard, who is a teen who was murdered by a hate crime in 1998, LGBTQ teen that lost his life in 98. Jason Collins quietly honored him. Today, Jason Collins works with the NBA to make the league more inclusive. He is a guy that you will see during Pride Month, even working with other teams. He's been honored by other teams. The Sixers is one that I saw pop up. And the NBA is good with recognizing Pride Month, putting apparel out with all the team logos in the rainbow colors, and just recognizing pride. I even got an email from Fanatics today where it was like, show your pride. And it had different apparel and different teams where you could, get your favorite team logo in the rainbow colors. Now Jason Collins working with the NBA, he connects with new players that get drafted, and he informs them about, how to speak, what language to use, and I guess trying to get in front of it, to be more inclusive in the locker room. And I don't know. I think there are a lot more players in the NBA, in the NFL, MLB, other sports that are gay athletes, but because of sports being male-dominated, testosterone, and it not really being the way of the past to come out, and these sports not being accepting of maybe gay people. There's a lot of athletes that have kind of hid their sexuality. We saw Michael Sam come out in the NFL a few years back. The Rams drafted him in the 6th round, but this kid was at Missouri. He had the talent to be a first-round pick. I think he was Defensive Player of the Year, but he dropped in the draft because of his sexual orientation, and he ended up not making it in the NFL too long. And I don't think it was just based off his talent. I think it was based off of some of the scrutiny, some of the social media attacks, and just how hard it's been to, be that first guy, And I remember a few years back when Jason Collins came out, and then the Nets took the lead. Now, the Brooklyn Nets have led the way for a lot of major sports organizations that haven't really done this, haven't really embraced it yet. The Brooklyn Nets have done this for the last 4 years. The first one was January 25th, 2017. They had a Pride Night every year up until, this past year, 2020, where Ja Morant and the Grizzlies came to town. Place was sold out. I looked at tickets. Pride Night in Brooklyn is a reoccurring thing, an annual thing. It's a proud celebration. The New York Liberty are also involved with that. They do a lot around Pride, and it's great to see. Brooklyn is the area for it, especially like we're seeing in this current climate with the Barclays Center being a hub for protests, and even our ownership coming out and speaking about racial inequality and equality for the LGBTQ community has a lot of parallels. And I want to say that I'm proud to be a Black person. I'm not a gay person, but I'm proud to see the Brooklyn Nets embrace pride. They had a pride parade last year. The Brooklyn Nets dance team had a pride dance routine. They've had different groups come out to these games. So not only the Brooklyn Nets, the Long Island Nets, it's in all of the franchise. So if you're a Nets fan and you're not with this and you don't understand this, take some time to research, hear us out, and understand that, you know, you can grow to understand. I wasn't always this way. I wasn't always so understanding. I wasn't always so welcoming. As a younger person, I'm 32, right? When I grew up, people use the term FAGGOT a lot. People even use the term gay as a like derogatory term, like, yo, bro, that's gay, or you're acting gay. And you don't hear it as much anymore. And that shows you that people can change. That shows you that times have changed. And I really want people in the sports community to open up and be more inclusive of the gay community, because it's only right. It's only fair. You're born a certain way. You don't choose to be Black. You don't choose to be white. You don't choose to be gay. You don't choose to be straight. These are things that you come into this earth with, and you shouldn't be judged against something that you didn't select. And you damn sure shouldn't be judged off of your skin color or what you love or how you feel about, you know, another person. So I wanted to open up this podcast with that. And now I'll pass it off to Hudson to get some words in. He's a younger guy. You know, I can't speak for the younger generation, but I know that they're a little smarter than us older people, and definitely the people older than me. Like, it's taken some old folks a long time to get it, but these younger kids seem to get it right away. Go for it, Hudson.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, you know, younger people seem to get it right away. And I think one thing that shows that is that, I mean, other than how great it is that the NBA allows and, you know, supports Jason Collins in talking to these newly drafted players and telling them, you know, what's up, what to do, how to be inclusive, you know, it shows that you don't hear a lot about, you know, issues. And of course, it's very easy for all that stuff to be covered up, to be masked. But I genuinely believe that the work he's done has had a great effect. And I know that, you know, we may be the younger generation, we may be more open and more tolerant, or at least able to move into being more open and more tolerant quicker than past generations. But it's still a problem. It's still something that people, you know, need to be told. And like you said, you should never be, you know, judged upon something that you can't control. You shouldn't be. It doesn't make any sense. The same way that racism is, you know, anti-normalized is the same way that it should be with homophobia. It's not, you know, I'm not talking one issue is more important than the other. Obviously, they're both important issues, but it shouldn't be normalized for people to have these opinions, to be able to say these things. I mean, I know myself, I dealt with it firsthand. You know, while I'm not gay, my college roommate was. And, you know, this is my first year in college. And, you know, all me and my friends last summer, we were talking about who our roommates were, who we got. And I said who my roommate was. And I think people were looking at his Instagram and they saw that he was at a pride parade. And it turned out that he was gay. But people were, you know, like, ooh, do you really want to live with a gay person? I was like, I want to live with any person. I don't care. I mean, you know, you wouldn't say that if it was about a Black person. You wouldn't say that if it was about a Native American person. You wouldn't say that if it's about a Muslim person. You wouldn't do that. And I think it should be the same with your sexuality. And I think, you know, one thing that does show that, you know, there is hope is that, you know, when I talk to my friends, I said, listen, you shouldn't say that. It's not the way it is. It, you know, and when I came back for breaks, they were like, what was it like? And I was like, it was like anything. It was whatever. He was a cool guy, great roommate. No complaints there. Absolutely not. He was even okay with when we recorded the Kenny Atkinson firing pod in my room. And I said, hey, can I have the room for a moment? He said, absolutely. So, you know, I just think that people need to learn to be more understanding, and they need to support the anti-normalization of these things. You can't hear people say, the same way you don't want to hear someone say the N-word, you don't want to hear someone say the F-word. It should be exactly as banned in the cultural lexicon. And I think we're moving towards that. And I think it's a great thing that we are. And I think it's a great thing that the Nets are, you know, leading the NBA and leading professional sports in general towards being more accepting of gay people, especially with everything that happened with Jason Collins. I think it's very easy for a team to just either ignore it or not do anything about it, or even ostracize him in a way that maybe Michael Sam was. I mean, in the NFL, you see lots of wild pre-draft stories. You saw Laramie Tunsil taking a rip through a gas mask, and he fell only 14 spots. Supposed to be the number 1 overall pick, fell to number 14. Michael Sam dropped out of the first round, dropped out of the second round, fell to the 6th round. So there's still work that needs to be done, and I think the Nets are at the forefront of that, and I think that's just a great thing that you can be proud of as a Nets fan.
Yeah, man, well said. And you just reminded me that my brother actually had a gay roommate his freshman year, and I know he learned a lot from that experience, and I got to meet him and be around him, and that just made me think that, what your friend said, a lot of this, there's two things, right? A lot of the like, oh, you wouldn't want to live with a gay person. Like, if you say something like that or you think something like that, you got to check yourself. You got to check your own sexuality. You need to be more comfortable in your own skin. And you need to not judge people that you've never met just because of their sexual orientation. Not every gay guy is into you, bro. Some of you listening right now are like, oh, I don't know why they're talking like this. Yeah, well, you got issues if you think that every gay person wants to touch you or do something to you. That's not the case. And when I say there's two sides of it, there's that. And then there's also the side of, a lot of these people are forced to hide. They're forced to talk a certain way, dress a certain way. And throughout history, a lot of gay men, women have had to play like they were straight, get married, have kids, and go through that. And I couldn't imagine, having to just completely live two different lives. And that's not fair. And I think now in 2020, we're seeing a lot of change. And as much as we're seeing, these protests and people were calling them riots, well, as soon as we saw these riots, I started thinking about all the riots throughout history. Whether you're talking about the Boston Tea Party or the Stonewall Riots, change is going to come after them. That's how you get some people's attention. And it's not fair that the gay community has to live in the shadows. They have to hide at night and, go to their own clubs. And honestly, I went to a gay club for the first time ever last summer, and I had a blast. And that's because I'm comfortable enough with my own sexuality. It was in Jersey City where I live, right down the street, and I could walk home. And it just was a type of thing where I had a friend that was going and was like, come on, man, go with me. A straight guy that was invited by some girls, some other friends, whatever. And I went, and a younger me would have said, oh, hell no, bro, I'm not going in there. I went, saw what it was about. And I'd wanted to see the place anyway, because I got a tour of it before they even opened it. And I was like, this looks like a pretty dope club. 626 in Jersey City, if you guys are ever looking to pop in. But yeah, it's about expanding your thoughts outside of, your hometown or your circle or what you think. Honestly, it didn't really change for me until I got into New York City, and I had a boss who was a gay woman, and I saw her emotion when the laws passed for gay marriage. And I saw the emotion that came out of her. And then I worked at MTV. So I worked with some guys that worked for Logo. They did social media right next to me. I was working on social media for like MTV, MTV2. They were doing social media for Logo's the channel where they have like RuPaul's Drag Race and some other LGBTQ programming. But like, imagine going to work every day and you walk in and these are your colleagues, your coworkers. These are people that you are drinking coffee with, eating lunch with. I was 25, 26 at the time, and I was kind of forced into that. I walked into that job not knowing that that was going to be my setting or my desk would be there. But I didn't want for a second to have anyone think that I, didn't like them or I had something against them. And I was open to everything, and I learned a lot and had conversations with some people, and it helped me grow as a person. And I'm thankful to say that, like, I understand a lot better now. So hopefully you listening to this podcast, you understand a little bit better. And we wanted to open up with that first 15 minutes. And I wanted you to think about the parallels between like the Stonewall Riots, the LGBTQ community, and these protests, which a lot of people were calling riots, and the African-American community. Hudson, what was the quote that you said pre-show?
Yeah, it's a very famous MLK quote. And I know there's been some people that have talked about it being taken out of context, but it's riots are the language of the unheard. And that cannot be more true, now as it was when he said it back in the 60s. It's it's a sad truth that there are still people who don't have a route to be heard. You know, people say, oh, go through the democratic process, vote, do all this stuff. If it's not working, if you've been doing it for all this time, at a certain point, you know, something boils over. It's the same reason that people get into a fight when they play sports. Like, I mean, think about it. You see people working in these like these joint training camps. Whenever you watch Hard Knocks, there's always a fight scene where a massive fight breaks out. Why do you think the fight breaks out? It's because people are working. Maybe you're a defensive lineman. You just can't get past this guard, whatever. And you get sick of it, and he pushes you to the ground, and you get up swinging. It's just a human emotional response. And, you know, to see it happen again and again is tragic. And I think that's why we need people like Jason Collins. That's why we need teams like the Brooklyn Nets. That's why we need leagues as a whole, like the NBA, to say, listen, these are problems faced by, you know, everyone, but also faced by people within our league. And we need to be able to have an open discourse about this and not either do one of two things: force people to be silent or force people to have to resort to rioting to have their voice heard, because those are both problems. You can't say, oh, rioting is bad, silence is better. No, silence is not better. Being forced to live a different life, to be quiet, to not voice your frustration, to not voice your problems, that's exactly as much of an indictment on society as rioting is.